Okay, it's on the way. And welcome everybody to Conversations and Miracles. It's a combination of Conversations with God material as well as A Course in Miracles material, but specifically on a book called Disappearance of the Universe, which is this book. I'd call it one of the most phenomenal books of all time.
All right.
And I highly recommend it. Published in 1999, and it's derived from A Course in Miracles, and you'll get the idea as we go along. I don't have any of those books, but I've got quite a few of these books. That's the first one that was published in 1995. So let me start this share screen. Material that we're going to be working with. All right, wave if you can see that. Yeah, you can see that?
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, so I've called it a study group revival because we started the study groups on Conversations material in the year 2000, and we had a number of study groups since then. And this one's going to be a Zoom one for obvious reasons. There is another local group which is running a Course in Miracles study group on Tuesday evenings, and I can't make that because I run a yoga class. And but if anybody's interested in that one, it's focusing on disappearance material rather than conversations. So I've said we've forgotten who we are, and here's a timely reminder. And basically, as I point out here, it's a course, you could say, in cause and not effect. If you're just treating the effect, it's not going to be enough. It's similar in the health circles. You can treat the effect, or it's going to be more effective if you treat the cause, if you understand what's going on right from the beginning. And that's actually a Course in Miracles statement, and I thought that was pretty good. And so I used that for that. And I've just put some samples below. This was in the email that I sent around. And you could say this is our meditation for the evening. And I've got some from Disappearance and some from Conversation. And it says, the ego's voice is hallucination. You cannot expect it to say, I am not real. And so the premise of the Course in Miracles and Disappearance material is that the ego has taken over in a lot of ways. And we're not here to destroy the ego, but to make it not the dominant force in our lives. Because the ego separates and divides, and by diminishing the influence to the ego, we can enter into unification and all is one sort of thing. Also from Disappearance, judge the world is to give it reality. Both sets of material tell us that this is an illusion and nothing's a coincidence. When we judge something, you make it real. That doesn't mean it's true, right? So there's a difference between truth and reality. If you want to make it real, you just judge it, and that may not be helpful in the bigger schemes of things. It also says to forgive means to give ahead of time. That's kind of self-explanatory. In terms of interacting with the world, we've heard of the idea of be in the world but not of it. But it does say there's nothing wrong with making it big, but why make it real? Right? So that it's a clue to tell us that it is an illusion, and if you make it too real, then the reality can come and bite you. That's not your ultimate purpose. We're here to be creators in a contextual reality, and we demonstrate our power of creation through our lives, and one of those elements might be making a lot of money, making it big, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, nothing intrinsically wrong with that, as long as you know it's just a game, right? I work from the idea that the universe is infinitely abundant, and we would like everyone to share in that abundance. And then it switches to the conversations material. God talks to everyone all the time. The question is, who listens? And that's a feature also in the shaman sorcerer information. It says the spirit is constantly bombarding us with information. And not everyone listens. They take on the aspect of the ego and decide that they can run their lives from a separation type point of view. And if that goes too far, the spirit will push us back into line to try and get us back onto the path that we've kind of chosen before we're born. And a couple of more statements. We place ourselves in hell to begin with in order to avoid going there. That's an interesting strategy. Maybe it's not a good idea to place ourselves in hell. What part of the journey that we're on is to realize that we've never left heaven. We've only just forgotten about it. And something that we were saying before we started recording is when you're reading this material, or this is what happened to me, and other people have reported it, they say that it's like they're reading stuff they already know. And the question that came up for me is, how come I've forgotten? How come I've forgotten all this material, but I know it all already? But that's the case. It's all within us, and we are urged to go within, else we go without. You know, that's a quote directly from this book. I like this one, which comes from the author of these books. A true leader is not the one with the most followers, but one who creates the most leaders. There's another one which says a true leader is not one who says follow me, but one says I'll go first. Right? So a true leader isn't just there to tell us what to do, but actually does it themselves in the first place. And can be an inspiration to others to take the path from there. And the final one for this little set is, if you want guarantees in life, you don't want life. Right? So nobody said this job that we've taken on is easy, and the aspect of not knowing is part of it. It's so that you can recreate yourself anew into the grandest version of the highest vision you can possibly imagine for yourself. And that in turn inspires the world. And there's no guarantees, but that's part of the game. If you want life, then you're going to play the game. And you've chosen to do that before you're born, and here we are. Right? So that comes from directly from this sort of material. And for the video, of course, for the recording, that's the other book, The Disappearance of the Universe, which is derived from A Course in Miracles.
I found that on Book Depository, actually.
You found that book?
Yeah.
Yeah. I might order some more of those, actually. I've sold quite a few before, and people have reported to me it completely changes their lives.
I'll post the link in the chat for you.
Sure, yeah.
If I can. Yeah.
All right, I'm moving on to another share screen. And before we go into the study material, I wanted to share how I was introduced to this sort of material. So I've got another share screen to bring up.
Yes, darling.
Do that.
You want to go out? Go out.
I hope I got the right one.
I hear a cat.
See?
Yeah, that's mine.
Oh,
All right.
is she all right?
You want to meet her? Here she is.
I can't see her. Oh, the Siamese.
She's Tonkinese.
Oh, Tonkinese, oh.
Yeah, she's pestering me. I think she wants to go out. I'm going to let her out.
Okay.
I'm just waiting for the share screen to come up.
Okay. It's a screen capture.
Yeah, we've got a frozen screen at the moment.
Yeah, that's all I've got.
Well, what I might do is shut that off and shut down some of my programs, especially Firefox, because it takes up a lot of resources, and then it might run a little bit better.
Oh, so in the meantime, I've just posted that chat. That's Book Depository. I can look it up on Amazon as well, and I'll find that now.
I find book Depository is pretty good.
That's my choice. And by the way, I just ordered a bunch of books from Amazon and Book Depository at the same time, and the Book Depository ones are all here, and none of the Amazon ones have arrived.
Oh.
Plus, you don't get any postage charges from Book Depository.
Yes, that's an. Oh, I've just posted. I'm just trying to look. Well, I prefer Book Depository too. That's what I use.
Yeah.
Mostly, unless I can't get it, and then I'll try an Amazon then. But it's the same price at Amazon as it is at Book Depository. $32.56 for the paperback.
Okay. All right, let me just check my performance because, oh, it's running at 100%. What's going on? That's going to make the meeting difficult. Okay, I think it's settling down now. Yeah, sometimes you got to tweak your computer, otherwise the Zoom doesn't work well. So I've had a bit of practice with that. Okay, it should work now. Doing another, going back to the share screen.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, yep.
Sorry, do you want to?
There we go. Coming.
All right, you can see that?
Not yet.
Oh, not yet. Please move this window away from the shared application, it says. All right, can you see that?
Yes. Yep.
That's our introductory poster we've already seen. Now, part of what's going on with the worldwide lockdown and where it's going to come out is perhaps this little poster I saw on Facebook some time ago, and I thought this is exactly where what needs to happen. Nothing should go back to normal. Normal wasn't working. If we go back to the way things were, we'll have lost the lesson, maybe rise up and do better. And particularly in the conversations material, it focuses on that idea. Instead of doing normal things, you should get back to being natural instead. Right? So that's one of the features of the conversations material. Just because you've been doing the same thing over and over again for a long time, it doesn't mean it's natural. And we need to get back to nature. So I thought I'd throw that in. Because only just today, I got a link to a brand new movie series, and it's called A Magnificent New Normal. And so that's consistent with that previous slide. And I'll be putting the links of that on our website very soon. And it's the same message. In other words, what's happening needs to happen. The normal wasn't working, as the previous poster said, and there were so many problems around the world. Humanity needed a kick up the bum, you could say, and particularly this information, I had a bit of a look at it. That's the focus of that. It says this is a great opportunity for us to change, and I consider the material that we're sharing tonight as part of that. You know, we need to find a better way. The best clues I found for the better way comes from this particular material. One of the things the conversations material says is that God never stops talking. You know, it's a conversation with God, particularly not 2,000 years ago, right? So the books of old are good, right? However, this is new material, and from what I can tell, it's the clearest expression ever given to humanity to date. And so we should take notice. Yeah. This is my introduction into these realms, but this was way before conversations material. This is back in the early 1980s, and this completely changed my world. I was in a black state, and I was fearful of the future. When I was guided to this material, all the fear pretty much vanished, and it covers. It's still probably the most advanced book I've ever come across, right? But for about more than 10 years, I couldn't share this information because nobody understood it. They all thought I was nuts when I tried to introduce it to them. And it covers things like man's conduct, which has been bloody awful, questions on the future of mankind and nuclear war, karmic law and morality, reincarnation, even Ouija boards, tarot cards, and the I Ching, because a lot of this was divination from it came out of the Ouija boards, but then they found it was working so well that they didn't need it anymore, and they were direct channeling. There's actually a whole chapter in here which teaches you to do that. You can connect with your subconscious, and of course the subconscious connects to all that is, right? So it's a very powerful way to get to the knowledge which is available to the everything sort of thing. All the knowledge is there, but if we don't access it, we don't get it. Anyway, I'll move on from there. Back in the early 1980s, humanity was on a path to destruction. The energy of humanity was pretty much going down an explosive situation with nuclear war on the doorstep, and remarkably, a number of things happened in the late 1980s which changed that path. So fortunately, we were able to raise the vibration of humanity to a point where we didn't have to go through that catastrophe situation, right? And I was very clear on this back in the early days, and I started a daily vigil of healing the planet, healing the earth. It talks about here, it's almost inevitable that it's going to be in a totally explosive situation that will cause its own downfall. However, we've transcended that. And one of the main things that helped us to transcend that was the collapse of the Soviet Union and what they call the harmonic conversions. And that happened in 1987. Can anybody remember the harmonic conversions? It was a worldwide gathering, meditation, organized online. And I remember it. I wasn't part of it. But those of us who have got more years behind us might be able to remember that. But anyway, the information I've got through Cryon is that helped to raise the consciousness of humanity into the constructive area rather than destructive area. That's how close we were. That's how close on a knife's edge humanity was. Now, very soon after 1987, all this fantastic material appeared, which gave us clues on how we can go from where we were. And so I'm saying that's not a coincidence. The Conversations with God material appeared, the guy who channeled the information, he was doing it in 1993. There's other material that also appeared at the same time. The Abduction to the Ninth Planet. It also appeared about 1989. This is one of the most phenomenal pieces of material as well, and I can give you more information on that too. We might even.
The author, George.
Sorry.
The author.
The author is
Show him.
Michelle Desmarquat, who lived in Cairns.
Show them.
What?
Show them the name of the author.
Can we have the book up again? I'm just going to go and look for that as well. What's it called?
It's called Abduction to the Ninth Planet.
Abduction to the Ninth Planet. I'll find it.
Michelle Desmarquat, and he lived in Cairns, and he claims in his book that he was abducted by this race of beings, and they are benevolent beings. And he was taken to their planet for the purposes of him writing a book, because humanity was going down the wrong path. You know,
Oh, it came up in Amazon.
sorry?
It was a mistake.
Time it might be on the journey to the ninth planet.
It's Abduction to the Ninth Planet. It's also called the Theuba Prophecy.
Or journey.
Yeah. Or Journey to the Ninth Planet? No, I don't think so. Yeah. Anyway, we can cover it later.
I found it under Theuba Prophecy too.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, it's according to the information, that race of beings is the most advanced, both technologically and spiritually, in this galaxy. And they go around and they help out other worlds. You know, if humanity is able to awaken, then that will be a role for us as well. But we're not there yet. Okay. Not only that, let's say that the Russian version of Conversation with God also appeared in 1995, and that's the Ringing Cedars books. So all this fantastic material, the Cryon material, also appeared in 1989. And what I gather from that is humanity as a collective made a decision to not go down the path of destruction. And so we were given all this fantastic material to guide us along the next step. And that's where we are today, right? Things can go haywire though. We've got a technocratic element, which is kind of trying to take us over. It's holding us back. And that could cause some major problems for humanity down the track. yeah, so that's the mind over matter material again. And this little portion here, I won't dwell on it, explains how we transcended the catastrophes that were going to happen in the early 1990s. It goes into quite a lot of detail, but we're not going to dwell on that. There's just too much information there. Yeah, so this is the study group we started with book number 4, which was published in 2017. And it's called Awaken the Species, where apparently we're at the perfect time to awaken. And awakening, to me, is taking notice of this sort of information, because why are we trying to, you know, figure it all out for ourselves? Why not get the information from the divine and then take it down the path where we can create heaven on earth? That's the whole idea. But that's for another day. I mentioned before that when we ran this study group, book number 4, if the people had not worked with book number 1, they found it difficult to comprehend what was going on in book number 4. And so that's why we need to go back to basics for a lot of people. But it's not that basic. This is fantastic material in itself. Book 1 is about personal issues. Book 2 is about global issues, including one world government, new world order. It goes into a lot of detail there. And I'd love to present that as a standalone item one day, perhaps. And book 3 is about universal issues, how we haven't grown up enough in order to interact with the benevolent races out in the open. That is, because there's tens of thousands of humanities in this galaxy alone. Yeah, this is pretty good material. Have you heard of the Thrive movie, which came out about 8 years ago? Okay, so you haven't heard of it. It's it was produced by Foster Gamble and his wife. I've forgotten her name, Kimberly. That's right. And it's a very powerful presentation on the mistakes of following the money trail, pretty much close to the spiritual information. Well, they produced another movie now, Thrive 2, and I'm going to be announcing that on our website as we go along. You know, so the information, which is very positive, is coming through at this time as well. We've presented a lot of this material before. This is straight from our YouTube channel. And this one down here, Beyond the Straw Man, is pretty much the mind over matter material. And I presented that about 4 months ago. And it starts off with the worst thing about censorship is, guess what? And I've got other stuff like the Magpie Alert, which was proposing a rural solution. Because if you go to book 3 of Conversations, it tells you humans are supposed to live in collectives, like a tribal collective, where everyone is supported, and you know, you don't get rid of your elders. They're part of the collective. And that's one of the blueprints of humanity. Universe is Mental also focuses on mind over matter material, and that also talks about blueprints of humanity. But anyway, oh yeah, in the top left-hand corner, this is John's presentation. I've only just uploaded it. Okay, so there it is, John. You're on the YouTube. Okay.
Good, George.
I've only just put it up there. Interestingly, I've seen only today I've seen two other documentaries. I didn't watch them all on vitamin D. Isn't that interesting? I'll share that. I'll share more with you on that with that later. How important it is, and of course your presentation was largely about vitamin D. So thanks for that. Well, that's just the front page of our website. Yeah, it's a huge amount of work. And we're doing renovations to the building right now, so I do ask for a little donation sometimes. That's on the front of the website if anybody wants to look at doing that at some time. Okay. Yeah, so that's online now on YouTube. You can look it up just by going to our website, which will take you to our YouTube channel, and highly recommend it. I trimmed out the stuff that we needed to trim out, by the way. Okay, we've done the full circle. And we can get onto a little bit of study material now. So if I shut this one down, the study material is when I go through a book which really turns me on, and there's quite a few of those which have done that, I make notes as I go along, right? And I garnish the best of the material, so you don't necessarily have to fully read the material at this stage, because I'm just going to present some of the quotes from those texts, and that's the study material that we're working with. You know, I'd recommend getting hold of the books and reading them yourself at some stage. Right, so I need to find those statements, and we'll ask you whether you can comment on them as we go along to see whether they resonate with what you're studying. Just got to find the right point. Right. Now I've got to share it. All right, so as it's coming up, any questions so far? Well, let's keep going then. So what I'm starting with is chapter 1 of Disappearance of the Universe, and it'll give you an idea of where we're going. The author, Gary Renard, came to Australia, came to Melbourne, would have been about 5 years ago. And we went and saw his presentation in Melbourne. And the first quote I've got from page 9 is, God did not create duality, and he did not create the world. If he did, he would be the author of a tale told by an idiot. And that's an interesting statement. And the way I can interpret that is the ego created the world. Does that resonate with anyone there?
Your statement or the original statement?
Well, either. You know, I think that what that's telling us is that the ego created the world. The ego is based on separation. And if you're talking about God, that's supposed to be all about oneness. There's no duality. And there's a lot of study material based on the idea that there is oneness rather than this dualness that we create through the ego. And when we judge something, we're actually going into separation, and we end up creating a world which is a tale told by an idiot. So I thought that was a pretty good statement from that book. It kind of resonates with me. Any comment to that?
Well, I mean, my immediate thought is that the space has to exist for duality to occur.
The space had to exist for a duality to occur.
So when you're given free will,
Yep.
Which is the space I consider to be the space for anything to occur, then duality is a choice.
Yeah. Well, particularly in the conversations material, you've made that choice by forgetting who you are. You're born with amnesia. You don't remember where you come from, but that's deliberate. It doesn't say that in the disappearance material so much, and it describes your unconscious. I'll go to the next statement, page 16. Your unconscious mind, which you are completely oblivious to, or else it wouldn't be unconscious, is under the domination of a sick thought system that is shared on both a collective and individual level by everyone who comes to the false universe, or else they wouldn't come here in the first place. So what that's implying is, well, it's a false universe, and it's a pretty sick system. Other material suggests that it's a predatory universe where we prey on each other. That's the shaman sorcerer material. It sounds like a pretty negative statement, doesn't it? It's a sick thought system. But I have problems with that. You know, it's kind of saying that the universe shouldn't have been created, but I think it should have. Particularly with the conversation material, it says we deliberately went down this path so that we can have the experience of being a creator. All right, so no comments on that. I'll move to...
Well, me again. It feels like the word language belongs in there somewhere.
Language?
Yeah.
How would you put that?
So the false part of the universe is the language, which is created to trick us into creating through thought, or alternatively to create not the false universe through thought as well. But the unconscious part indicates that it's something outside of our awareness. So we have programs which are installed, which we're not choosing.
Okay. All right.
That's all I got to say about it. There's nothing more to say.
Well, when I read that, it made me laugh. That is that the trick we're playing on ourselves? That's what happens when you identify with the ego rather than with the Holy Spirit. That's another way it puts it. If I go to page 17, it's all a trick. That your perception, something that you value very highly, is simply lying to you. Your unconscious thought system, it's so seemingly despicable, you'd run away from it if you could really examine it. Wow, is it really that bad? The path of yoga actually is to, they've got a term called pratyahara, which is withdrawal of the senses. And your senses tell you about a world, but it's actually false. It's not real, but it tricks you into thinking it's real so that you can have this experience, you know, because if you if you knew it all, if you knew that this was an illusion, you wouldn't be able to live this existence. And so we play the game. It's actually a game that we play, according to the conversations material. And it's like an adventure. Now, disappearance puts it in a quite negative terms. Your unconscious thought system, it's seemingly despicable, and you'd run away from it if you could really examine it. Well, perhaps that's true. You know, when we, if anybody's into mind therapies, when we try and uncover the unconscious system, we can find all sorts of rubbish there, can't we?
Tell me about it.
Yeah. And in fact, we store trauma, don't we? And one of the protection mechanisms we have is to bury that trauma so that we don't have to deal with it. But sooner or later, it's going to come back up. We can't bury it forever. But that's part of the journey.
Well, what's interesting is that some of the trauma that you store isn't language-based, but you use language as the twigs and leaves to cover over the hole.
Yeah, I mean, the initial trauma might start from before you're born, or the actual birth process. If you go through a traumatic birth, which is what a hospital might put you through, you end up having all these difficulties in life, and you don't know where it's coming from. One of the presenters here, she came from Russia, and she started the natural birth movement around the world. And her quote is, "Peace on earth begins with birth." In other words, the trauma that we experience from being born in a violent manner plays out in our lives, and we don't even realize where it's coming from. If you've had a violent birth, you might end up having a violent life, and you don't know why you're violent. You're just reacting. You know, you're protecting yourself because you've been hurt from a very young age. You know.
If I can share.
Yeah, sure.
This book here, The Way of the Psychonaut by Stanislav Grof. Stanislav Grof, he's a practicing psychologist, and he pretty much has brought the birth trauma cycle and compounded it into a scientific basing, I guess. So he's broken down the stages of birth into 4 categories and clinically looked at those effects on people later in life, and was able to find reasons for all types of afflictions that we have, and even for particular sexual desires as well.
Wow. That's
and yeah, I would really highly recommend this book, because he also is the father of holotropic breathwork, which is a practice of creating psychedelic states without the use of psychedelics themselves.
Oh, yes, please.
In order for pretty incredible healing. And I've personally done a breathwork circle. I did a men's breathwork circle, and it was a very, very enlightening. It was an incredible experience. I don't know if anyone here can remember the last time that they took the biggest breath they could and let out the biggest scream they could, from full lung to empty lung. But that is a very, very incredible experience. And I couldn't remember the last time I'd done it, but to be in a safe environment and to go through the breathing process, and for that to naturally occur, that was my inner hurt and traumatized child that needed to be heard, needed that scream, needed to release that scream, needed to release the tension, the laughing, the crying, and all those elements in reality for me to experience them in order to release them and to move on from them. So this book came out only last year, and it's published with MAPS, which is the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies in America, founded by Rick Doblin. And they are doing a lot of incredible work in terms of using stuff like MDMA, and LSD for psychotherapy, for lasting changes in individuals.
Michael Pollan as well is involved in that.
Michael, yes, he is, and very much involved. And he has a very good book as well, How to Change Your Mind.
I bought it. I've got
I have it on my. Have you read it?
I haven't got to it.
Neither have I.
I haven't read it. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got it sitting there looking at me right now.
Uh,
But yeah, just what you were saying there, George, about the birthing process. In this particular book, he breaks it down into 4 distinct stages and maps them out in a pretty incredible way.
so what's the name of that, please, Joseph?
I'm sorry?
What's the name of the book?
It's called The Way of the Psychonaut, and my camera is flipped, but Psychonaut, and it comes in 2 parts, and it's available on the MAPS website.
Oh, so you can't get it through other...
I'm not sure, but because it's such a new release, I think maybe it's only through their particular website. But it cost me $100 Australian to send the 2 books out, but very much worth the purchase.
Okay, so what I would like is, are you able to put something in the chat box that links us to
Sure
that?
thing. I will find that now.
Thank you. I wanted to also pop up something which is contract revocations, which seems to relate to this subject as well.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
So spiritual contract revocations. I'm just going to post that there. That's on Andrew Parts' website.
There's also the father of rebirthing, a process where you are taken through and you can remember right back to the very day you're born, and that's a breathing technique. I've forgotten who's the guy. I've got some of his books. One of his books is about death, and it says death is a dying habit. It's a habit that we've got ourselves into, and that's basically why we age, according to the morphogenetic resonance. Morphogenetic resonance is the mode of the species. You know, every animal species has got a morphogenetic resonance that it follows, and you can break that apparently. Anyway, I'll move on to the next item. This is still in chapter 1, page 18. The universe keeps repeating the same patterns over and over again. Why people get sick. The reason behind all failures, accidents, addictions, and natural disasters. The real cause of all violence, crime, war, and terrorism in the world. The only meaningful solution to all these things and how to apply it. I don't know what the conclusion of that is. Yeah, but we do seem to follow patterns, and again, it's because of the ego and its idea of separation, and separation implies that there can be superiority and inferiority, good and bad. It defines the opposites, whereas our path should be one of going into unification. But because we've forgotten, we go through these patterns, and we might keep making the same mistakes until we realize that that's not the way to go. And once we change, because that's what it's all about.
Yes, I was going to say that's what it's all about, right? I mean,
yeah.
I just remember this part in conversations, but we have to know, it's the ones who have experienced the deepest sorrow are able to experience the greatest happiness. You have to know the bad in order to know when you're feeling good, and you have to know left to know right, and up to know down. So, but I'm getting the feel that it seems so far that it's largely negative from this text by Gary Renard. I mean, it's
yeah, I feel like he introduces the whole thing in a rather negative way.
Yeah.
I think that's the cause of identifying with the ego, and I think the conversations material puts it in quite a different way, which we can interpret as more positive. But it's still a fantastic book. There's no doubt about it. And when I read these statements, it actually made me laugh, because I thought, shit, this is accurate, but it's pretty bloody awful, isn't it? In a lot of ways. Also on page 18, you have heard that the truth shall set you free, but nobody tells you what the truth is, that the kingdom of God is within you, but nobody tells you how to get there. Are you ready for a spirituality that, like the truth, is not of this universe? Well, take that how you interpret it. I guess it's self-explanatory. We're not, when we come into this realm, we don't get a manual for how to use the mind. We have to learn by hook or by crook, 2 steps forward, 1 step backward. Eventually we get there. But it can be a tricky ride. You know, if you go too much into the ego and superiority and domination, that sort of energy comes back to you, and it makes it rather unpleasant experience. And that's the only reason that sort of an unpleasantness comes around, in order to remind us of who we are. Final one from chapter 1. You don't need us to help you feel good about a universe that was never worth the price of admission and never will be. I have some difficulty with that. I still feel like the universe has got a place based on some of the other philosophies. It's something that we've chosen to go into. And that's when I'll switch over to the conversations material and also focus on chapter 1. So let's do that now. I'm just going to find the other material. Come on. Okay. All right, so we've changed page, and I'm going back to chapter 1, and the Course in Miracles, Disappearance, has got a lot to say about the ego, and the conversations material doesn't say a lot about the ego, but this one I found in one of the books called Friendship with God. It's not one of the books 1, 2, 3, and 4, but it's from the same author, and it says, ego is who you think you are, not who you really are. A big ego is a sign of disliking self, having to get others to like you as compensation. But ego is necessary to have the imagined experience of a separate entity in a relative world. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Very correct.
Yeah. So while the ego can cause some pretty negative stuff for us, through the idea of separation, it's necessary. Otherwise, you can't live this experience. You can't have this adventure of duality, even though duality is not our natural home. You know, we're here by choice, according to the higher material. That's what I feel. It's not just a mistake, put it that way. From chapter 1, page 1, this is how Neil Donald Walsh, this is the first statement that he was compelled to write down. And it was an answer to a question that he was he wrote a very angry letter to God, and to his surprise, God answered. And this is the first thing that God said: "Do you really want an answer to all these questions, or are you just venting?" Right? The reason why Neil was very angry with God is because Neil Donald Walsh went through a living hell over several years when he lost his families, his marriage, he lost all his wealth. He even had a very nasty physical accident, and he was in traction for a long, long time. He was thrown out into the street, and he was living out of dumpsters. I've played the movie of Neil Donald Walsh and how he was led to this point. It was pretty hellish life, but you could say it's kind of necessary for him to go down this track, and he was chosen to be the instrument of the source of material. And that was the first answer. And then God said, "You are sure as hell about a lot of things, but wouldn't it be nice to be as sure as heaven?" So already it's putting a more positive outlook on the way things are. You might as well be sure as heaven, because heaven is already here. We just got to recognize it. It's a choice. You can choose hell if you wish, and most of us do, through our forgetfulness, through the amnesia of being born. So also on page 2, God suggested that Neil's questions are your questions. It is your life story that brought you here. Otherwise, you would not be here right now. So what it was suggesting is it's no coincidence that you're looking at this material right now. You were guided to it, you were led to it. And the questions that Neil is asking, he used to be a radio announcer. And so he had a very deep radio forecaster, announcer, radio show host. And so he had a very powerful intellect to ask the very powerful questions, which led to this dialogue. And obviously he was an ideal candidate for the subject. So the questions that come up are actually your questions. We've also co-created this material. So that's interesting. It wasn't just Neil Donald Walsh, it was you and I that also created this material. You know, because at a deeper level, we're all connected anyway.
Yeah.
God talks to everyone all the time. The question is, who listens? You know, that was an answer to Neil, who asked, well, who does God talk to? Doesn't God only talk to the high priests? And the answer was no. Talks to all of us equally. And that's also in the shaman sorcerer in material. We are bombarded with information from the spirit equally. It depends on who is listening.
You know, I honestly think that is the most important thing to realise.
Yeah.
Like, of all the things you could realise, that would be it. God's talking to you all the time. Listen.
Yes.
Right? It's like, it just hits you in the face. It's like, what? All my problems are from ignorance, from not listening.
Yeah, and that's why it advises on a regular basis to go within, and so you can get those sort of answers. You know, and in some people it comes out naturally as intuition or psychic information. For others, they've got to work a little bit harder, or they might get a gut feeling, or it's probably the method that works for me the greatest is synchronicity. Right? I don't get psychic information, but I notice when synchronous events are happening, things that can't be explained in normal terms tell me that there's something going on. I wish I could think of an example right now.
I like to ask myself, how am I really feeling? Just sort of close my eyes and listen to my stomach. The stomach is a good indicator.
Yep.
Just sort of remember that if I'm thinking about the future or the past, just remember those and just be like, how am I really feeling right now? And generally, when I've asked that, as that question comes out of my mouth in my own head, I get the answer straight away. So,
Yeah. Other people might ask within, what's my heart's deepest desire, and that will guide you.
I think it's also important, though, to note that sometimes with that true feeling or what you truly feel can be completely counter to the situation that you have set yourself into or what you think you want your outcome to be. So in terms of, say, a relationship or an intimate relationship, if you're ignoring the signs that it's over and not going to work, it's sometimes it's the ego telling you, or that doesn't want to let go of something.
Yeah.
That it's hard, very hard then to listen to that feeling. But if you're in a good mood or in a good state of mind, and it's easier to listen to that feeling if it goes along with what you thought would already be happening. So I think it's just really important to note that that answer that comes to you, what you're truly feeling, you know, it could completely dismantle what's in front of you. But if that's your truth, and then you will be okay in that truth because it is your truth. It's how you feel.
Yeah, what I use is what the master of the age told us, and that's seek and you shall find, ask and it shall be given. And if you have the faith there, I find that I do get those answers that I'm looking for. Anyway, everybody's got their own way of doing, of getting that sort of guidance, let's say. And then on page 3, it gets straight into, it introduces some powerful concepts almost straight away. And this is talking about language. And it says, talk is constricted by unbelievable limitation of words, but feeling is the language of the soul. And what I get from that is that, or another quote, which I got from somewhere else, is language was invented in order to stifle communication. Right? And it's so true, isn't it?
Yep.
Dealing with legal matters, they changed the meanings of words, so you don't know what the bloody hell they're talking about. Or the church might, or it's probably gone past that. They give their sermons in Latin, and so you don't know what they're bloody talking about in the first place. And so it's what the information is saying is that language is the least effective communicator.
Yes.
The most effective communications, well, it comes out in the next quote. When feelings, thoughts, and experiences all fail, God uses words, the least effective communicator. Language is often misunderstood. They are mere symbols, not truth, not the real thing. All right? So when Spirit wants you to learn a lesson, it'll throw you an experience, and that's the most powerful way to learn. If you're not paying attention and you don't listen, they might even break your leg. Right? You might suffer an accident which need not have happened. It's because you're not listening to the higher self. You know, there can be other reasons for accidents as well. You know, you might have chosen in your life plan that you were going to have a particular experience based on the accident, and so you have the accident. You know, I'm trying to get the point across that it's not a punishment. What happens to you in life is never a punishment. It's either the higher choice that you've made, or it's a result of not paying attention to the path that you've chosen to take in this lifetime. Yeah.
I like that.
So now we're, that's only the first 3 pages, and then page 4, there's so much importance on the Word of God, Bibles or books, and so little on experience and feelings and factual, intuitive knowing, when it should be the other way around. Yeah, I can identify with that, and I'm sure others can as well.
Joseph was mentioning something before about having an aversion to the word God when it was presented on the face of the book, and I'm thinking, yeah, that's kind of what that's about, isn't it? At least to me.
Yeah, well,
like your perceptions of based upon the words are very different from the actual experience.
Yeah, you actually throw away your feelings and your experience in favour of something you read in a book, which may not be your truth at all. And that might be a consequence of a religion. Let's say a religion tells you how to think
and what to think,
and maybe that's not the best way to operate. It might be contrary to what you know or what you feel or experience, and yet you reject your feelings and experience, and that's a very negative way to proceed with our lives. And so on page 4, not all feelings, thoughts, experience, and words are from God, the Spirit. The basic rule of discrimination chooses the highest thought, which is joy, the grandest feeling, which is love, and the clearest word is truth. And these 3 elements are interchangeable. Right, so in other words, if you're seeking an answer to a question, find it in your highest thought or your grandest feeling or your clearest word. And that takes practice, apparently. According to the information also in chapter 1, that practice is not that difficult to do, but it does take discipline. You've got to keep reminding yourself. If you come up with a negative thought, it actually tells you, don't follow the thought, change it to the positive, and that'll change your experience.
Well, meditation is one way to get the kind of the baseline nice and flat so that you can choose.
Yeah. Okay, so on page 5, experience is the most powerful messenger. Especially this is ignored due to free will, the power to do as we choose. And so that's a downside of free will. Instead of following a positive path, we've got the free will to choose the ego and go down a negative path, and we suffer the consequences of that. A simple example might be is that in order to enrich oneself, you need to take from others. Well, that's not necessary because the universe is infinitely abundant in the first place. Needing to get rich by tricking people and taking their abundance from them is a negative path that'll come back to you, and you'll suffer the consequences of that, in the present or in a future incarnation. Next page is God's communication and our own imagination any different? What do you think the answer to that is? Because I'm not sure.
I would think not.
Okay, especially in the context of the highest thought is joy, and the grandest feeling, which is love. You know, this can be all our imagination. And so we can use imagination in a very positive way, provided we're choosing the highest thought, the grandest version of the highest vision is the way the material puts it.
I'm not leaning at the word positive. I'm just thinking to myself, what if it's the whole idea that what you imagine, you create, right? So if your own imagination creates the reality, then how is that any different from being a creator God? Literally, that's what you are. And that doesn't necessarily mean positive or negative. It just means creation.
Yeah, I think what it's the material is telling us to focus on is it puts it in explicit terms further in the book. Focus on the grandest version of the highest vision you can think of yourself. Right? Focus on how powerful you are and how loving you are or how compassionate you are. And if that's in our imagination, then you'll move towards that. If you focus on, oh, I can't do this and I can't do that, you'll actually manifest that.
Yeah, that's what I said, basically.
Fair enough. All right. In fact, there's a very good quote from Henry Ford when he created the Model T, and he says, "If you think you can,
But you think you can't, you're right. Yeah.
if you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you won't," or something like that.
If you think you can, you're right. And
If you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Yeah, you're right both ways. So, on page 8, it says, all great discoveries have been made from a willingness to not be right. That's what's needed here. The context of that, from my understanding, is there seems to be an arrogance, a human arrogance of different groups, different religions, different nations, who all imagine themselves to be the ones that are right, instead of acknowledging that someone else's point of view of life or way of life is equally valid for their own purposes. And so by different nations and different peoples assuming that they are right, it gives them the right to go and invade someone else and cause hell on earth. That's the way I interpret that little sentence. If anybody else wants to comment. It even says on page 8, listen to feelings, highest thoughts and experience. Forget teachers, books and words as the least purveyors of truth. So that's interesting.
Throw in my book collection.
Yeah, so here we are studying a book, but it's saying don't believe a word that you read. It even says that later on in the book. Don't believe a word that you're reading here. You have to test this out for yourself. This is only a guidepost. Go with your feelings, your highest thoughts and your experience. So page 10, God does not reveal God's self through outward observation, but through inward experience. If moving mountains, some would say it must have been Satan. The act of asking for revelation or proof is a statement that produces the experience of not there. Does that make sense? What that's saying is if you're looking for proof for something, you're actually pushing the result away. Because the statement this is how powerful our imagination is. If you're asking for proof, or you're seeking proof for a particular outcome, you're actually putting an energy out to the universe saying that this does not exist. I want proof before I believe it. And it's actually the other way around. When you believe it, you'll see it. If you need to see it before you can believe it, you're actually locking yourself out to the creative force of the universe. I'm not sure if I've explained that very well. Maybe someone can explain it better.
I think George, the next quote
Doing a holiday.
is a better way to maybe come around to that by using yeah.
Want is a statement of lack and produces an experience of wanting. Correct prayer involves gratitude, not supplication. Yeah, I think that makes it clear. When you want something, all you get is the experience of wanting. You don't get having. And you could say that asking or trying to get proof for something is like a wanting. And so this is the way, the result. I hope that makes a bit more sense.
No, it's good actually. That's perfect.
The want is a good one, and I think I'm sure everyone here has, but to remove that word from your vocabulary is very powerful.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
It's kind of like that whole question of hope versus will. I see it in the same kind of, people hope for a result and others will. And the statement of wanting is like hope. It's not creative in and of itself. Thanking the universe for something is the will to create.
Yeah, the hope itself is almost a statement, an affirmation of no hope.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't exist. You're saying that it doesn't exist. You're hoping it'll happen, but it's not happening, and so you're actually pushing it away.
Yeah, I need to capture that statement. I like that.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
I mean, I've read it before, but you forget these things.
Yeah. So if I go on to the next statement, page 12, faith moves mountains. The sponsoring thought, that's the thought behind the thought behind the thought, becomes your reality. The request itself is not necessary. That's also a reference to prayer. It says probably in that region of the book that the only effective prayer is one of gratitude.
Yeah.
If you're not grateful for the result in the first place, then you don't get the result. And so when you do a prayer, you don't say, "Can I please have this thing because I don't have it?" You say, "Thank you for giving me this experience." And if you ever watched the movie The Secret, that's what The Secret is based on. See it in your mind's eye. See the grandest version of the highest vision you can possibly manifest for yourself and in your life, and you'll be drawn to it. You'll start manufacturing that in your life.
It's very good stuff.
On page 13 now, God is the observer, not the creator. God created us, and then we create the rest in the image and likeness of and power of God with free choice. There's a lot in that one sentence, isn't there?
I'm going to get quite lazy now. Took a while to get going.
Planets and shit.
Sorry?
Did we create the planets and stuff?
We, as in divine energy, yeah, we did.
We created all the planets.
Well, not you and I.
No, I mean
The collective consciousness, because everything's got consciousness.
So we will do the first one.
What Passio would call the consciousness in the aggregate.
Okay. The consciousness in the aggregate.
So in other words, we all did it.
Yeah, yeah. Even the stuff that we think is inert has got consciousness,
Correct.
and that's part of the aggregate.
Yep.
Would be right.
We did it. Yeah, we all did it. It's all self-created and generated. Yeah.
Now, even though this is called Conversations with God, when you get further into the book, it'll tell you that God doesn't exist. All right. God is the all that is, right? God is everything, both seen and unseen. And so we are ourselves God's information. You know, we're actually on the journey towards becoming gods ourselves. If there is a God, an energy called God, I like to use the word spirit. It doesn't personalize the idea of God. That energy created us, but then just observes us. And interestingly, I find that where it says God created us and we create the rest, that kind of matches what the disappearance of the universe was talking about. When we choose the ego, we create the mess that we're in. That's what I feel anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes into the idea that we are created in the image and likeness and power of God, which, you know, it kind of comes from the Bible as well. That's what it means. We are God's information ourselves, and we're on that journey to become gods ourselves. You know, it probably won't happen this lifetime, but there's many, many dimensions that we can explore, not just this physical realm. And that can happen both individually and for an entire species as well. And the aspect of awakening the species could refer to the entire population elevating its consciousness to the point where it transcends physicality. We move from a third dimensional experience to a fifth dimensional experience. There's lots of information on that idea that I've seen. So also on page 13, God does not care what we do. In other words, God is not judgmental, right? That's the Old Testament way of looking at things. Because the outcome is assured. The outcome of life is in doubt, creates fear, and is an illusion. What I understood from that is the outcome is assured. In other words, we all get there in the end. We all go through these stages of finding our way. We go through being a young soul, and after many incarnations, we can get onto the path of being an old soul and perhaps get to mastery. But the outcome of that is assured. We all get to a mastery sooner or later, you know, in successive incarnations. We get to the point where we transcend the physicality because we all get there. And I'm sure we'd all agree with that, wouldn't we? Maybe.
I mean, if we want to define mastery that way, then yeah, I think we all get there.
Eventually, we will get there. There is a small amount of information which I've come across, which says it's very unusual, but a soul can go from a single physical lifetime into mastery in one single lifetime. But that's extremely rare. You'd have to be following the path directly if you were to do that. You'd have to be in touch with spirit all the way through. In general, it takes hundreds and hundreds of lifetimes to get to that point. Maybe even thousands or even hundreds of thousands. Yeah, that's other information that I've seen.
Well, I hear it, so I'll take your word for it.
Okay. Well, you know, if you're inspired to read the material, you'll probably come across that information. Also on page 13, devil is mythology, explanations of divinity, joy and ecstasy, counter jealousy, and anger, rage, and after they kill you, they call you saint and love you for staying at peace while they killed you. What's that trying to say? Hang on.
Well,
The explanation of divinity is joy and ecstasy and counter jealousy.
Right. When you're moving on the path to mastery, and if you announce it too early, then there's a lot of the population which will get jealous and angry at you, and they will actually try and kill you in extreme cases because you're too advanced. You're actually destroying their world of ego, and that's why this sort of information can't be pushed onto people that are not ready for it, because they would react violently. In the old days, the Wicca people, the witches, used to get burned at the stake, and yet they were quite evolved spiritually. They came from the Wicca religion. Is it a religion? Yeah. That's an example. Or if an avatar is born on the earth, let's say like Jesus Christ, he was crucified, according to the story, because he was too elevated in divinity. Sometimes it's better to hold back.
He actually came to question the leaders, and they didn't like it.
Yeah, he was persecuted for being a little bit too truthful, but that was his mission, according to the information that we've seen.
You're not going to start a new page, are you?
Sorry?
It's 8:15.
8:15? 9:15?
Fine.
Yeah. How about we call it a night? Because we've covered a fair bit of information already.
Yes.
And we're still in chapter 1, and you can sort of compare the two chapter 1s from the two texts, and that, especially that last statement, it shows you that the world and the illusion that is created results in the insanity of identifying with the world that the disappearance material was putting up. It's saying that in other words, they're both saying that we live in a predatory universe. It's pretty tough being here, but that's part of the experience. And as we evolve, we can transcend that aspect. We become gods ourselves. But in the early stages, the early incarnations, it can be damn difficult. You know, we can actually be feuding each other in our lifetimes, and we could actually be murdering each other. You know, and it appears as though that's what happens in our incarnations. We go through some pretty horrific type situations in prior incarnations as part of our enlightenment, because we learn from each experience about who we really are. Is that fair?
Yes.
Yeah.
George, that's great. I'll have to go now. Look forward to continuing with it next time.
Okay. Well, on Friday, do you want to continue with the stuff that you were presenting?
Yes, sure. I'll ring you tomorrow and just talk about that. And
Okay.
tomorrow morning, what time would you be available?
I'll probably be coming in here about 11 o'clock.
Tomorrow, okay. I'll contact you maybe early afternoon then.
All right. Well, all right. So that's an interesting start, and I might be able to use this as a video to try and introduce more people to the information.
Yeah, I like these précis you're doing, George. I think that's a really good way of,
Okay. Cool.
just getting the mind around the, some of the key points.
Yeah. Other study groups, they just read the material directly, and I've just put up the stuff that inspired me. Sometimes it's one statement a page, or two or three, or none sometimes.
Yes.
And that was very powerful for me. Yeah. All right.
Thanks, George. Thanks for putting that together.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, and namaste.
Namaste.
Okay. All the best.
Yeah.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you very much, George. That was good.
Nice to meet you, Joseph. See you, man.
And you, Chris. Nice to meet you too. We'll hopefully, well, I guess in the next coming weeks, we'll continue the chats, I guess.
Fantastic. See you soon.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.